The hell was not happy. It's awful! He knows your name.
There was this boy named Jason Voorhees, drowned Bristol Lake about 30 years ago. Legend has it that Jason came back to get even, vowing to kill every teenager in the area.
I'm her legal guardian, not you or anybody else. And I know what's best for her. She never had a stable life till she came to live with me.
This boy just doomed. Yeah, tell me about it.
Don't tell me you're still trying to scam on Tamara. Don't be a dweeb, Wayne. She is a user.
Space cadet. Wonder if she'll narcos.
Are you girls using drugs?
Rumor has it she's a teensy bit afraid of the water.
So, are you having fun yet?
And you're all gonna die.
This is Jason's fault.
Jason Voorhees.
Walking corpses are not real.
Check it out! Damn, we're in New York! New York City!
Perfect day for swimming. You don't want to end up drowning like that Voorhees boy.
You a dead meat slime bag! Yo, man, it's cool. It's cool, man. It's cool. Toxic waste, son. The sewer floods out with this stuff every night at midnight.
You don't understand. There is a maniac trying to kill us.
Welcome to New York.
Hi, I'm Deborah Voorhees. I play Tina in Friday the 13th, Part 5, and you are listening to Hysteria Continues.
And indeed you are. Welcome back to the Hysteria Continues, and I'm battling against that beautiful late 80s music. Which will be more of that to come. So it's time for yet another Friday the 13th instalment, and we are all going to getting on the Love Boat to Manhattan with Friday the 13th Part 8 on this episode 110. A special episode because obviously every time a Friday the 13th comes round we get to do another film, and of course as we get a little bit longer, the series gets longer in the tooth, then obviously that becomes more of a mixed bag. But we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But how are we doing today on this beautiful sunny morning? Erik, how about you?
You didn't get me in the graveyard, Gothy Gotherson, and you're not going to get me now. Thank you. Thank you very much. End scene.
End scene. Right.
That was me channeling Jensen Daggett in Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yes. Well, what a performance that was, which, again, we'll digest and dissect a little bit later. But
are you insinuating she's not a terribly good actress?
I wouldn't say that she's. I wouldn't say she's an actress. But thank you.
Great hair, though.
Well, God, yes, her and the other woman with that kind of terrible 80s perm. I just thought they should have got a scene where they got stuck together like Velcro and they couldn't get apart. That might have generated a little bit of suspense. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So, Joseph, how are you doing?
There is no more restaurant.
But I'm starving. He's channeling Scott Reeves there.
Yeah.
Another classic actor.
Mm-hmm.
It's
by the way, I'm okay. Thanks for asking.
I'm glad to hear. Thank you. And Nathan, are you going to
channel?
Well,
what about the restaurant? What about the restaurant?
There is no more restaurant, Erik.
No! There's a vending machine with chunky Kit Kats somewhere, though, isn't there?
Yes, there is. It's on the lower. It's on the Lido deck.
Oh dear, I think I'm going to get seasick. Nathan, how are you doing?
Oh, well, my head kind of hurts a little bit. It kind of feels like somebody just punched it right off.
Or hit you with a guitar.
With a flying V.
So, how's your head, Nathan?
Well, it's a slight headache, but I'm taking the medicine to cure it.
I'm glad to hear it. So, okay, well, so we're all fine and dandy, and yes, we are back for another Friday 13th. But before we get on to that, before we set sail for New York for the last 5 minutes of the show, we will be talking. We'll be talking about what we've been watching recently. So, Joseph, do you want to go first?
Yeah. To start, I guess the big thing I need to talk about, and I'll try to avoid spoilers, is Ash versus Evil Dead, the TV series. I know Eric's seen the first episode. I'm not sure about you, Justin or Nathan.
I've not. No, I've not seen any of them yet.
No, but the second episode aired yesterday, and I just think this is the TV show I've been waiting for like, as a horror TV series. I just think the horror and the comedy is perfectly balanced. It's very in tone with the first two Evil Deads instead of Army of Darkness, which is a plus. Wickedly violent. Bruce Campbell's just in fine form back as Ash. It's wildly entertaining. Maybe a little bit of clunky CGI here and there that I could do without. But, for the most part, a lot of great practical effects, a lot of good sight gags. And Sam Raimi, the creator of the Evil Dead series, directed the pilot. So, I was like, it's a 10-episode series, and I was, with different directors each time, I'm wondering how someone's going to, be able to outdo Raimi. And if it's any, surprisingly enough, the second episode's even better than the first, and it's directed by someone else. Just a really fun show. 30 minutes long per episode, so it's like it never has time to get into like a dull spot. There's always something going on. The second episode, to avoid spoilers, has a really great guest appearance by Mimi Rogers, which is kind of centers around a dinner table, and the characters are having dinner, and it's just wildly entertaining and just hilarious and over the top gory and just basically what you'd want from an Evil Dead film. So thumbs way up. I'm going to finish this season, and I can't wait to see season 2, which was renewed before they were renewed for a second season before this show even started. So I'm quite thrilled about that.
Okay, I've not seen any of them yet. I'm still working my way through a couple of other series at the moment. But Erik, you saw the first one, did you?
Yeah, I've seen both episodes. Okay. So I would have to agree with Joseph's enthusiasm. I thought it was terrific. And certainly the pilot felt like a true sort of Evil Dead sequel. I mean, I know Army of Darkness divides opinion. I recently bought that Blu-ray, and I was watching it quite recently, and I've warmed to it slightly more, but the series is more in keeping with Evil Dead 2. Which is, a big plus, I suppose, if you're a fan of the series. And it is surprisingly gory, and particularly in yesterday's episode, there's a scene where somebody gets, a Deadite gets a broken bottle to the throat, and it just gushes blood for what felt like 5 minutes, but it probably was only about 15 seconds. But it was extraordinarily gory, and of course, one of the things about the Evil Dead series is seeing Ash covered, his face covered in blood and goo, and you certainly get plenty of that. And it's great fun, and they also play on the fact that Ash has aged as well.
Yeah, and I also like the basically, throughout the series, Ash's progression is basically from this kind of clumsy buffoon into this just completely unlikable creep. And he is really like just a lowlife, but he, Bruce Campbell just really mugs the camera, and he does it so well you can't help but like him.
There's a great actually opening shot to the pilot, and this isn't a spoiler, but it does all that close-ups of him adjusting leather straps and that to sort of emulate the scene in Evil Dead 2 where he's attaching the chainsaw to his wrist. But it turns out that what he's doing actually is tightening his waist with a corset because he's going out on the pull looking for ladies.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Which he succeeds.
I'm not sure he does.
Yeah.
Nathan, have you seen any of them yet?
No.
No. Okay. Right.
Are you a fan of Evil Dead, Nathan?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then you will like it. I don't think it will. I can't imagine any fan of Evil Dead being disappointed by the series. I could be wrong, but from what I can, from my judgment is that it certainly delivers.
It's an
and what it does. Yeah, I think what it does well, sort of, is that the pilot, it focuses maybe on 4 or 5 main characters. Like Scream Queens, when it launched, was had a dozen maybe characters it was trying to squeeze into its 45-minute running time, which is probably the reason why it was so. It just seemed so in your face and fast because they're trying to just cram in as many characters as possible. Whereas Ash versus Evil Dead, now the pilot was 45 minutes, wasn't it, Justin or Joseph?
Yeah, and
the pilot episode was slightly longer. Yeah.
Yeah, and the second episode's 30 minutes, and that's what they're going to keep with the rest of the series. Just actually, it's right under 30 minutes.
Yeah, they've kept the main cast quite low, so that gives it more room to breathe. Even though the nature of Evil Dead things is quite frenetic, but it's a plus that there isn't too many characters to be cramming in.
The humor I think really works. The not to get into too many spoilers, but in the second episode where Ash is sitting at the dinner table and he's got his gun strapped to his back, just the sight, just the way they frame that shot and what's going on in that scene, it's so I laughed a lot. It's just they really nailed the humor, and horror comedies are kind of a mixed bag, but if they get the humor right, they can be really well done, and they really do it here. They know how to balance it just right.
Cool. Okay.
Is it like a remake of the first two movies, or is it a sequel?
It's a sequel.
It's a sequel.
Okay.
Ash has kept, the premise is, and this is in the first few minutes of the pilot, that Ash has kept the Book of the Dead, and he gets stoned one night with a woman, and he tries to impress her by reciting passages from it, and that resurrects the Deadites.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you. That's one to watch.
Don't do pot, people.
Yeah.
Especially you, Nathan.
Okay, it's too late for me to quit this morning, so I'll wait.
You've been smoking. You've lit one up.
You're smoking pot at 6 a.m.
I couldn't help it.
He did it from watching you, all right?
Yes, and I took. I needed headache medicine.
Jesus.
Are you stoned?
Total
Nathan Johnson.
No, I'm not.
He's on that reefer.
Oh my God!
At 6 a.m.
Even
I didn't mean to do this. I was just trying to get rid of my headache. Okay. It's medicinal, strictly for medicinal purposes.
Even I don't drink Chardonnay at 6 a.m, Nathan.
Yeah, and that's saying
Hair of the dog.
You drink martinis at 6 a.m.
Well, that's true, actually. Yes, but no, I just had a nice stiff coffee. But
this was needed to get through Jason Takes Manhattan.
Okay.
Well, fair enough. I need a crack.
Yes, so. I think we all need something, a little something to get us through that movie. But okay, so right. Well, we'll leave Nathan simmering, smoking in the corner. But Joseph, have you anything else you wanted to?
We're all going to jail.
Yeah, I've watched a few things, but I think the only thing really worth mentioning is Tales of Halloween, which I said last episode I tried to start watching, but I got distracted. But I finally watched all of it, and it's the Halloween anthology with several different directors. I really loved this film as well. A couple of stories aren't quite as good as other ones, but for the most part, it's very consistent, very entertaining. Just very atmospheric and very kind of keeping in tone with the Halloween season. Kind of it'll definitely get cult classic status, I think, in the next few years. And my favorite segment, funnily enough, directed by Mike Mendez, is very Evil Dead 2 in tone. Just a lot of wild, goofy stories, great special effects. That's pretty much all I can say without spoiling it. So yeah, go see that.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Is anyone else? Nathan, did you manage to see anything else through the cloud of smoke?
The cloud of smoke. Yes, I watched Tales of Halloween. I really liked it. I mean, the stories are kind of varying in quality, but I really like the one that Joseph was talking about that kind of had the Evil Dead 2 kind of feel to it. It's kind of goofy, but it's really entertaining. So that was probably the best story of the bunch.
Cool. Trouble is, Nathan, now every time you speak, I get in my head, I get the image of this stoner girl in Serial Mom.
I get the image of Jack Black in
She flattened Mr. Stubbins. She flattens Mr. Stubbins just like a pancake. Oh, puke time, man. Oh, look at her hair.
Yeah, he's just like Chuck and Chili in Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yes. Gosh.
Chili's dead.
It's going to be one of those shows.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about having a drunk cast, weren't we, at some point? So this is the next best thing. Anyway, thank you, Joseph. Nathan, have you been watching anything else?
Yes, I watched a new. Well, I don't know how new it is really. I'm not sure. I think it's pretty recent. It's called Christie, and it's about a college student that's left behind, or she actually chooses to stay behind for the Thanksgiving holidays at her college. And after a chance encounter with this girl with a hoodie on at a local convenience store, like she ends up getting stalked by this group of people in hoodies at the abandoned college over the night. It was pretty good. It had some suspenseful moments in it, and I liked the lead character. I thought that she did a really good job defending herself against these crazy people. It kind of reminded me of something like Them or F, something like that.
No, that's what I just thought it sounded a bit like that. So, okay, is that a new movie? Is it?
I think it just got added to Netflix. So yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Joseph, have you seen that?
No, I've been meaning to, but haven't caught it yet.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you, Nathan. Anything else?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you, Erik. How about you?
Okay, well, I watched Ju-on White Ghost and Ju-on Black Ghost, which are two sequels to the Ju-on, the J horror series from the early 2000s that I was completely unaware of. There were two sequels that were released simultaneously in 2009. They're both sort of 60 minutes long, and they don't carry over the same characters as the other Ju-on films. Instead, they're just kind of generic tales of a cursed house. And, generic is really the word to use for these two movies because, although they capture the weird ambience of the original, there's very few scares, and it feels very much like a paint-by-numbers job. There is, like, the croaky-voiced woman in both, but she's, about as scary as One Direction. Both films are structured in that fragmented style of the original, but there's tons of individual threads that just never pay off. So all in all, I found the experience of both Ju-on White Ghost and Black Ghost to be quite lackluster and completely non-essential in my opinion, which is a shame because the original film is one of my favourites and certainly has some of the scariest moments in cinema from modern times, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it's unfortunately with the Japanese, that kind of whole supernatural, the Asian horror, certainly the ghost kind of thing. It was a case of diminishing returns, wasn't it? Because it burnt so brightly, didn't it, back when Ring came out? And you're a fan of Ring, aren't you, Erik?
You're so childish.
Is that? So I take that as a yes.
I've never known anyone so childish as you,
Erik. I'm talking about the Hideo Nakata film. You're a fan
yes,
of that,
I do like the film The Ring.
Okay. But when that came out, I remember getting a bootleg video of it before it was released in this country, and it was sort of thinking how scary it was. And then obviously that kind of kick-started all of the films that followed, and the Jew and the Grudge films, which I kind of collected. Used to get order DVDs from Hong Kong to get all these slightly... There were so many of them, and then they just kind of played themselves out, didn't they? And I think I saw White Ghost, Black Ghost. I think I bought that back in when it first came out, and I can't remember anything about it apart from they're shot on video, aren't they?
Yeah, they have a much cheaper sort of look about them.
Yeah, yeah. So, Joseph and Nathan, any thoughts? Did you watch any of the Ju-on, the original versions?
I saw the first one. That's pretty much my knowledge of those films.
I saw the first one. I really liked it, but I just never really got into any of the sequels.
Okay.
I'm not even sure how many they have put out, actually.
Me either.
Quite a few.
About how many?
Probably about, I don't know.
400, yeah.
400.
Well, there was two films before the main feature film, which were done for straight for video, and then there was a sequel to the feature films. That's 4, and then there was the remake and 2 sequels, which is another 3. The American remake I'm referring to, which actually I thought was quite good.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad.
So they're the police academy of J horror, then.
They are completely,
pretty much. Cool. So, thank you, Erik. Anything else?
Yeah, one other thing I'll mention, I saw Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, which has just come out on Blu-ray from Scream Factory. Now, this was slightly less fun than I'd remembered it. It has a good opening. What? You're a big fan?
Yes.
Okay, it has a good opening half, and then I think the second half is kind of a bit ho-hum. Overall, I did enjoy it. It's basically the old Night of the Living Dead premise where a group of humans are boarded up in a building trying to resist a demonic onslaught led by Billy Zane. I always thought that the film had a few similarities to From Dusk Till Dawn, or From Duck Till Dawn, as I've typed here in my notes. Interestingly, on the extras, they mention actually that From Dusk Till Dawn was meant to be the first Tales from the Crypt movie, but they couldn't agree terms with Quentin Tarantino, so they went with a spec script called Demon Knight instead, which has, as I said, many similarities to From Dusk Till Dawn, in my opinion. The effects in it are quite good, especially there's a scene maybe half an hour in where Billy Zane punches a cop in the face and his hand goes right through his head, which is always a good thing. A gooey arm amputation, and I like the fact that absolutely no one is safe from demonic possession, even the children. So a good movie, yeah, not a great one. I remember it being better. Maybe I need to just rewatch it once more. I don't know, but it wasn't as good as I had remembered. But a thumbs up. It's a great Blu-ray. Great extras on it.
Well, I imagine Joseph's a fan of any movie with Billy Zane and fisting. Aren't you, Joseph?
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be he's the only one who would get me on your team, guys.
Ooh.
What, Scunthorpe United?
Yes.
So I haven't seen. I don't actually remember seeing that film. But what about you guys, Nathan, Joseph? Have you seen Demon Knight?
Oh yeah, I've seen Demon Knight. Of course, I love it. I think Billy Zane, carries the movie as this kind of wacky leader of all these ghouls in this hotel. All the supporting cast is really well casted. William Sadler's the hero is really good. Will Smith's wife, I can never remember her name, Jada Pinkett, she's really good. But I really especially liked CCH Pounder, the old matriarch of the hotel. I liked her character a lot. Just a really fun movie. Lots of good, goofy effects. Lots of crazy dialogue. Just a fun time all around.
Cool.
And an element of Jesus.
Yeah, well,
Jesus is in there.
He's about as believable as that movie. So.
Sacrilege, and on the Sabbath as well. My pearls.
Eric,
it is the Sabbath.
It is the Sabbath.
Eric, do you have proof of your Almighty Savior?
Yes. How else do you think I managed to see Ash versus Evil Dead? And also I saw Tales of Halloween as well, which hasn't been released over here. I can say these things because Nathan's a junkie, so it makes my crime seem less.
A junkie? That's so uncalled for.
Eric, you also saw finally The Final Girls as well, didn't you?
Oh, I saw The Final Girls as well. Actually, there's a connection between Final Girls and Friday the 13th Part 8, but I'll get to that later in our behind the scenes. But I loved The Final Girls. I really did. I thought it managed to be funny, and I think, Nathan, you were saying it's actually, there's bits that are quite sad, particularly towards the end where they recap the Betty Davis Eyes song comes on again. It's quite sad, which is unusual. I mean, you go through so many slasher movies and you don't feel anything for the characters, and then a comedy one comes along and you end up sort of, almost tearing up at one scene. It's weird. But, yeah, I loved it. I thought they got the 80s vibe correct. I mean, it's set in 1986. I think my OCD tells me it looks more 1982, but I won't, take away points for that. I mean, I love the soundtrack as well. Apart from Betty Davis Eyes, you've got Mickey by Tony Basil, and there was a Wang Chung song on there as well. The opening credits.
Dance Hall
Days. There's some dodgy CGI, particularly with the car crash at the start, but I'm forgiving them all that because it was just such an entertaining, fun movie.
I watched it a second time. The first time, I was a little miffed about the PG-13 rating, but, watching it the second time, knowing what to expect, it was even better. Just one of the best movies I've seen this year.
Well, that's exactly probably why I enjoyed it. I mean, forewarned is forearmed is the phrase that they say. So you guys have told me not to expect a gore fest, so I went in, knowing that. So, my expectations were more than exceeded. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. And I love the way it opens with a sort of a grindhouse style trailer for Camp Bloodbath, which I thought was very clever and very well done, and would have been right at home, stuck between Planet Terror and Death Proof.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree with you about feeling sympathy for the characters too. I don't usually feel sympathy, I guess, I did for Sleepaway Camp too, but I usually don't feel sympathy for characters, but I did in this one.
Yeah, and the thing is, it takes a sort of a cheesy comedy to make you feel that, it just shows the strength of the writing, I suppose.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you, Erik. Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
Oh, hold on. Was it? Oh, yeah, it was. Okay. Did I mention? I don't think I did last time that I watched Spasmo, the '88 film's new Blu-ray.
No. Yeah.
So the Umberto Lenzi, who obviously gave us the incredible Eyeball. Spasmo was a kind of is a kind of another one of his gialli, or it's a kind of gialli mishmash. It's probably one of his strangest movies. But 88 Films have released it on Blu-ray over here in the UK, and I picked that up and watched it a couple of weeks ago now. Actually, I haven't watched, to be honest, I haven't really had a chance to watch very much. But that was it's not one of my favourite films by a long stretch, but I do, watching it on the big screen in the kitchen with the projector. It's got a great soundtrack, and there's some very arresting images of all the kind of lifelike dolls hanging in the trees. And a pretty good twisted ending. So, Erik, is that what you're familiar with?
Yes, it is. And it is. It's one. Whoa! Somebody falling over.
No, sorry, it's my cats. They're going crazy.
Well, it wouldn't be a podcast without cats.
It wouldn't. Yeah, it's certainly from the more bizarre end of the spectrum of giallo. It's one of those ones where right up until the last 5 minutes, you're convinced it has to have a supernatural twist to it because things are just so bizarre. I do enjoy it, yeah. I have to say, not one of the best. It has a great title, though, if nothing else.
No, absolutely. It was kind of, I think it came, it was before Eyeball, wasn't it? But it's also got Susie Kendall in it, who's obviously in Torso and Assault, which is kind of the British giallo, and of course, probably most famously in The Bird with Crystal Plumage, who is an actress who disappeared completely from the face of the earth. Well, I'm sure she's around, but she disappeared from public life, and so she's never turned up to talk about any of these films. So, but she must be quite old now, mustn't she? In fact, she must be. She's 71 now.
Oh,
she's still alive. Yeah. So, but apart from that, the only other thing...
So she's now the bird with the droopy cleavage.
Yes, very good. Is that your joke of the week?
No, but my joke of the week... I struggled with my joke of the week just to forewarn you all that I had to consult Meep to see if this joke was transatlantic, and it wasn't. So I had to go back to the drawing board and come up with a really not very good one for today. I'm sorry.
What's the difference then between most weeks?
Well, the punchline... Oh... You've no appreciation of art.
That is true. That is true. But anyway, we'll come on to that later, Erik, and we'll be the judge of that.
You just put your pickle on everyone's plate, college boy, and you leave the hard stuff to me.
Well, talking of unfunny stuff, also...
hey!
No, I'm kind of going into something else, talking about Scream Queens, the TV show, which I saw the latest episode, which was the one where Jamie Lee Curtis gets briefly put in an asylum. And she was fantastic in this, and I like the central conceit and the head in the fish tank. Have you all seen it?
Yeah.
You still watching
it?
Yeah. But it's still not really working, is it? I don't think it's funny. Does anyone think it's funny?
No, yes. I mean, I thought there were some very funny lines in this latest episode where the Chanel number 2 or whichever one it is comes back to Emma Thompson, I'm going to say, but that's not her name. Emma Roberts. Is that her name? Yeah. Comes back to her character in a vision and says that she's languishing in hell, and did you know there's no dinosaurs down there because Jesus stole them all? I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, it's got some funny bits throughout, but it's not...
I don't think the horror element doesn't work at all.
No.
When the killer shows up on screen, I get kind of bored, to be honest.
The killer didn't even show up on screen, this one, didn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There was no murders in this one. Yeah.
Well, there was. There was the beheading, wasn't there?
Oh yeah.
But I'm still sticking with it, and it's a good way to pass an hour. But it's not, it's certainly not the second coming, is it?
No. I mean, Ash versus Evil Dead is kind of showing it up. That's how things should be done for a horror TV show. Interestingly,
I read that the Scream TV series has got it's got a second season, but they're completely going to... I don't know if they're going to have new characters and new people in it, but they've changed the people making the series for the second one. They've decided it didn't really work, the first one. I don't think it was, although it was renewed for a second season, it wasn't as successful as they were hoping, so they're going to go in a different direction.
This is what happened to the famed TV series?
Is it?
The first 2 series were great, and then they changed the whole production for season 3, and it was all downhill from there.
Oh.
That's pretty much what happened with the Walking Dead as well, but that show's never been good, even from the start.
Well, I'm sticking with The Walking Dead. I'm quite enjoying it. These
well, that's because you're stupid.
Eric. Well, it's been wall-to-wall action for the last this season, with like thousands of zombies and sort of, it's quite.
I mean, I really shouldn't badmouth it. I gave up like halfway through season 2, so maybe it did get better. But I don't know. After 1 full season and a half season, if it really didn't connect with me by that point, then I guess there's really
season 1 was a 90-minute movie stretched to 10 hours, and it bored me.
Yeah.
Well, I think it does. I admit it gets quite repetitive because it's just lots of killing zombies.
Yeah, unlike Friday the 13th sequels, which are fresh and original, each one.
As we're about to find out, aren't we? Are we ready to get on that ship?
Should we mention about Gunnar Hansen?
Oh yes. Well, this episode's we're recording on Sunday, but we're probably going to be putting it out for Friday 13th or on Thursday. But yes, we heard this morning the sad news of Gunnar Hansen, who most famously portrayed Leatherface in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, which, as we know, is Nathan's favourite ever movie. Sadly passed away, aged 68 today. I don't know. We don't know any more details than that at this point, but just thought we'd pause to mention him. It's obviously after losing Wes Craven and Christopher Lee, and it seems to be a bad year for losing horror legends, isn't it?
And Nathan, you've met him, haven't you? Yeah, you met Gunnar Hansen?
Yes, I did. I met him and Marilyn Burns and Alan Danziger at a convention. He was a really nice guy. I was glad I got to meet him.
And he was in the Reykjavik Whale Watch Massacre, or whatever it's called. I was looking at his IMDb credits because I didn't realize he actually is Icelandic. I assume he is American, though, isn't he? Of Icelandic heritage.
I think he's born.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have accents or anything.
Yeah. But there's a big gap in his CV from Texas Chainsaw Massacre to the mid '80s. There doesn't seem to be much.
No.
I mean, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers was one he was in briefly.
Well, he was great in it too.
Yeah. Well, he didn't really do much, did he? In that, to be fair, he was kind of. I think he got paid to stand in the corner and look menacing.
But his character did have one monologue, and he was prevalent in the film because he's the one that kept the chainsaw hookers together in their cult.
Well, very tongue in cheek, wasn't it? So, but he will be missed anyway, and it's kind of it's a sad day to lose another horror legend. But I can guess, I mean, not being maudlin, but as we all advance in years, and the people who are making great films in the 70s and 80s, who are all 20 or 30 years our senior or more in some cases, unfortunately we are getting up in years, aren't we?
Well, you're like a year older than Gunnar Hansen, aren't you?
I'm trying to think. No, I'm about
Grandad, we love you.
25 years younger. Joseph, you young whippersnappers, you. Okay. Well, anyway, so just thought we'd pause to say farewell to Gunnar Hansen, and what better tribute could it be than us to talk about Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
After an electrifying return from the bottom of his Crystal Lake grave, indestructible psycho-slasher Jason Voorhees ships out to visit the Big Apple and paints the town red. High school senior Rennie Wickham is in for the ride of her life and possibly her death when she and her classmates take a graduation cruise bound for New York City. Little do they know that crazed serial killer Jason is a stowaway who quickly transforms the teen-filled Love Boat celebration into the ultimate voyage of the damned. Only a few survivors reach New York, where the bloody rampage spills into the gritty streets and subways of Manhattan in a deadly game of hide-and-seek, leading to a toxic confrontation with Jason for one last, final time. So this was released back in the days when there was a significant delay between the US and UK releases. So I'd heard in the meantime that the film was A bit lackluster, and B, only hit New York in the final third. So my expectations when I rented the VHS when it came out, because this, of course, didn't get a cinema release on this side of the Atlantic, my expectations were quite low going in. which normally means that I'll be pleasantly surprised. But in the case of Jason Takes Manhattan, it more than lived up to my low expectations. Its biggest flaw is that it's just really dull. And it's overlong too. I mean, 100 minutes is way too long for a Friday the 13th movie. The best ones, part 2 in particular, are 80 minutes. It's 20 minutes shorter. So they should have learned a lesson from that. Its flaws are quite fundamental. The 2 leads are really, really incredibly bland and unengaging. The actors are not terrific, but I wouldn't say it's their fault. I think it's the writing. Rennie goes around in this almost catatonic state, and she's this sensitive writer type with the troubled past. And then you have Scott Reeves as Sean, who's this pretty boy, empty vessel, if you'll pardon the pun, as her love interest. And then you have these secondary characters of Charles and Colleen, who are the guardians of Rennie, and they're equally bland, even though Charles should be entertaining because he's this sort of Victorian dad character. So he should provide some entertainment value, but he just doesn't. Once again, it's the secondary characters that get off really early in the movie that are the saving grace, if there is any saving grace to Jason Takes Manhattan. The rocker chick JJ, played by Saffron Henderson, she's possibly one of the most underused characters in a Friday the 13th movie because she gets killed in her second scene, and she shows more charisma in her 3 minutes on film than the rest of the leads do in 100 minutes. Likewise, Charlene Martin as Tamara, she steals every scene she's in, playing the equivalent of Part 7's equally brilliant Melissa. It's a shame she doesn't get more screen time, and although, she's the uber bitch, it would have been nice if she sort of, wised up to herself and ended up being the final girl. It would have been, like, if they were trying to do something new with this franchise, then why not do that? Make the bitch the final girl. Likewise, her easily led sidekick Eva, played by Kelly Yu, she's far more interesting than any of the lead actors in the film. So for this reason, it's the section on the boat that I find far more engaging than when they get to New York. At that stage in the film, all the interesting characters are gone, and you're left with half an hour of just these bland characters going around New York / Vancouver, doing not very interesting things. Another fundamental problem I have with the film is this new ability for Jason to teleport, which is a bizarre new twist on his character that it's never explained. And don't get me started on the toxic sludge climax, which sounds a bit erotic when I say it, where Jason is cleansed and returned to his former 8-year-old self. It's right up there with the great what the fuck endings or scenes even in horror movies. And, when Jason's unmasked, his face looks like, a lump of plasticine that someone has accidentally sat on. So Friday the 13th, Part 8, to me, is a far better concept than it is a movie. It's goreless, suspenseless. It's populated with the blandest characters. On the plus side, I think Jason, when he has his mask on, looks great in the movie. He's like a big bear, if you'll pardon the pun. He's hulking and intimidating, and he's covered in KY jelly, like Justin's bottom, for most of the movie.
Erik,
did I just say that?
You did just say that out loud.
You can feel free to edit that out if you want. I didn't mean that to come out of my mouth. Plus, there's kind of a fun let's move on. There's a fun late 80s vibe to the looks and fashions of the movie. Rennie's hair looks like a big plate of Singapore noodles for most of the movie, and Tamara's backcomb number is a complete work of art. As I said, the murders are generally lackluster. It was slightly gorier in its original cut. The MPAA insisted on a few trims, but even in its original incarnation, they had toned things down considerably. The death by hot coals in the sauna is okay, and so is the infamous boxing decapitation. But apart from that, it's just people being thrown off the side of boats and dunked in barrels of water. It's just not interesting. So overall, though I was bitterly disappointed by the film in 1989, and it has never really grown on me. It's not as bad, is probably what I'll say, as some of the entries that are coming further down the line. But it's still a bad movie. And unlike sort of the first 5 or 6 entries in the series, this one, I can never keep my attention on it for its full 100 minutes. I just lose interest in it quite quickly. And, no amount of deformed children appearing out of mirrors is going to, make this an entertaining film. As I said, worse was to come, particularly with the next entry, which I think is the worst of the series. But we'll get on to that next Friday the 13th. In the meantime, Justin, you're a big fan of this movie, aren't you?
Well, you could say the opposite. I kind of guess is probably. I've avoided watching it for a long time actually, because I bought. Do you remember when I hadn't bought the Blu-ray box set, but I did buy all of the the new DVDs when they came out. And I thought I must have watched it when I got that, but I don't think I have. I don't think I've seen it for years because I remember it being so dreadful. And sadly, time has not made me think of it any more fondly. If anything, I think it's worse than I remember. For all the reasons you describe, I think I've found my attention kind of just drifting away. I really had to fight to keep my attention on the screen. I think the positives are, I mean, Kane Hodder is fantastic as Jason. I think he really is good, and he was great in part 7, and so that's one of the the real benefits. Say the two leads are so bland, and I don't think it is their fault particularly. I think a lot of people who were making these movies, there's one thing without just not getting onto background, but when Kelly Hu said, who's friends with the son of Martin Sheen, and she was having dinner with Martin Sheen, and his son said, "Oh, Kelly's going to be in a movie," and Martin Sheen said, "Well, what's that?" And she said, "The new Friday 13th." And he apparently spent 3 hours trying to convince her not to do it, and why the Friday 13th movies were evil, which didn't work. She did it, but there was no energy in the movie at all. It felt like everyone was going through the motions, be it Paramount, who didn't want to give them any more money, the actors. It was just zero energy. There was zero suspense. And when Jason can teleport everywhere, there's no suspense at all. I mean, there's a scene with Kelly Hu on the dance floor, which should be a riot, but it's he seems to be in two places at the same time, doesn't he? She turns around, he's on one side and there's another. It may be mirror things, but he's suddenly able to teleport across the dance floor to be right behind her in a split second, and it just doesn't work. Again, on the plus side, I did quite enjoy I like the opening scene on Crystal Lake with the two horny teenagers. I thought that was quite well done. You can't fail but smile when Jason finally gets to Times Square. That scene is great, and the scene in the diner and on the subway train, all those scenes are I think work really well. But Vancouver pretending to be New York City with all of the running around back alleys, it's just very drab and not very exciting. And when she, when the final girl, where Jensen Daggett sort of has that kind of stares at that puddle of gasoline on fire and then gets a flashback to the lake, I couldn't help but laugh. She has absolutely no reaction to that Colleen character dying in the police car, does she at all?
Nope.
It's just kind of like
heartless bitch.
Absolutely no reaction at all to what I was confused, maybe because I wasn't actually watching the movie that closely. But who was Colleen, and was she the mother, or just
no? She was a teacher. She was a teacher at her school, but I don't know what the relationship was with her and Rennie. But Rennie's parents died when she was young or something.
And so, who was Charles? Who was Charles then? He was another teacher.
He's her uncle. He was her uncle, I think.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And coming on to him, he was he just seemed to be.
I don't want to come on to him.
No, but he seemed to be kind of mostly embarrassed by being in the film, didn't he? He did. I mean, I saw on the disc. There's interviews with quite a number of the cast, and he seems to be quite. He doesn't appear to be embarrassed by it now. But at the time, I just thought I could see in his eyes almost panic at the thought of, my God, I'm doing this scene with this naked teenager with paint all over her. I've been in Gunsmoke and all the shows like that, and now I'm in Friday 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. It should have had so much potential, and I think there was a potential there, and it was wasted, basically. I don't think it wasn't the director's fault, which we'll get onto with background. I think the director did make quite a bland movie, considering this was supposed to be the end of the Friday 13th franchise. The whole toxic sludge thing at the end was ridiculous. And who finds a little boy with bad makeup, one eye makeup, covered in sludge, scary? And
a bad acting boy as well.
A bad acting boy. It just it doesn't work. They should have done. To be honest, even if they just had Friday 13th on a boat on a cruise ship, that in itself could have been good. But I think you're always onto the loser when you sell an audience a lie, basically, which is Jason takes Manhattan in the last half an hour of a movie. It doesn't work. It's I think I think it probably is certainly, if not the worst Friday the 13th sequel, certainly up there, and a major step down from Part 7, which I have a big fond spot for. But yeah, that's my tuppence.
When you saw this first, were you aware that the Manhattan section was limited to the last 30 minutes?
I'm trying to remember, actually, because I would have been, before I saw it, I probably would have been read about it in Fangoria, and I saw all those Fangorias, and I remember seeing all of the gore shots that were missing, like the darts to the eyes murder, which was reshot, wasn't it? Completely to do with the murder in the sauna. I think I probably was aware that the stuff had been cut down, but obviously it didn't come out in the cinema in the UK. I think Part 7 or Part 6 was the last one.
Part 6 was the last one, yeah.
And they did come out, by that point they were coming out on video quite quickly, but it probably was a good 6, 9, 12 months or whatever after the America release in the States. So I can't remember, but I do remember always never being particularly fond of this. I mean, that teaser trailer that we played, it works fantastically. It's very witty, isn't it? There's so much. There's little witty touches throughout the film, but it should have been so much more. And I think we'll talk a little bit about why when we get to background. But yeah, that's my tuppence.
Okay, Joseph, what do you think? And did you manage to see this in the cinemas when it came out back in the day? Not insinuating that you're old, but
yes, I actually did see this at the cinema. I don't really remember my reaction back then, but watching it last night. One thing I do kind of like about this, film is they kind of turn Jason into this sort of avenging angel, where everyone is pretty much hoisted by their own petard. I mean, the girl's killed by her guitar. The camera guy gets a glimpse of Jason before he dies. The vain bitch gets killed by the mirror. The guy who tries to drown the child gets dunked in toxic sludge, and so forth and so on. So there's kind of this die by the way you lived kind of aesthetic.
I never picked up on that.
Yeah, Julius gets killed in a boxing match, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's interesting in that kind of way. You can kind of tell they were trying to do something different. But having said that, this is probably the worst in the series. It's just so bland, and if you notice, there's really kind of a lack of a proper score in a lot of scenes. Certainly, the whole Harry Manfredini score is gone. Occasional like wee on the soundtrack, but that's just about it. There's no suspense. When Jason can just pretty much be anywhere at any time, you don't have to worry about any of the characters. Not that you would really worry about any of these people because they're just so dull. Like you said, all the interesting, and I even stretch to call them interesting. All the, halfway decent characters, pretty much get killed off in the first, 20 minutes of the film. And so, when they finally get to quote unquote Manhattan, you're just falling around just a bunch of dullards. I did like I do like the insinuation that anyone who comes to New York right off the bat is going to get raped or mugged or trip and fall into a puddle of toxic waste. And the sewer worker at one point says, "We flood the sewers at midnight every night with toxic waste." I was sitting there thinking, really? Have these people ever really been to New York? I mean, this is like the movie you make when you've never actually do what?
Does that not really happen in New York?
Yeah. This is the type of movie you make when you've never actually been to New York. You just heard stories about some old man getting mugged in an alley and you think the whole city's a cesspool. I guess on that kind of level, I found some amusement with it, but it's just so drab and so lifeless. And, by this point, you can tell pretty much maybe you saw a better performance in Kane Hodder, but for me, I just saw even he seemed like he was going through the motions. He just stood there a lot, kind of breathing heavy, and I just really, aside from those little moments here and there, I didn't get much enjoyment out of this film at all. I do like the rooftop boxing scene. I think the punchline, no pun intended, is just really hilarious. Like I said, I do like the whole they get killed by their own designs type deal going on. For my money, the stuff on the boat, if they beefed up the characters a little more, maybe kept certain people alive longer, they really wouldn't even had to visit Manhattan, because Jason on a boat is it's a fun idea. It's isolated. There's really nowhere to go except the water. Maybe they can redo it and Jason can just fight a shark or something, like the scene from Zombie or whatever. But I don't know. I can't really recommend the film. Just by this point, you can just tell the enthusiasm was gone, the thrill was gone. And I honestly, I don't think they've actually recaptured the thrill. I guess the closest they've come is maybe Freddy versus Jason, and even that's stretching it. I think this is pretty much the beginning of the end for the Friday the 13th series. So I'm gonna have to give it thumbs down.
Okay, Nathan, you're the boy who likes everything bad in the world, including drugs. What do you think of Jason Takes Manhattan?
I think I liked it better than the rest of you, because I didn't dislike it. I mean, you all made good points that are true. I mean, I agree that this movie, to me, is kind of the beginning of the end of a decent Friday the 13th film, because I love Part 7. So I think definitely this just starts the downward spiral of these movies, which I also agree with Erik. The next movie to me is the worst in the series. It's beyond terrible. So I dread that one. But I loved the character of JJ, and I hate that she dies so quickly. I'm like, I would love to have seen more of her in this film. And, we don't, which really stinks. Obviously I also agree they killed the more interesting characters on the boat. I mean, I remember when I was younger and I watched the boxing scene where Julius gets his head basically punched off of his body. And that was just the most awesome scene in the world. But watching it now, I was very underwhelmed with that whole scene. I guess I just didn't really care this time around. But, and the whole finale with, the toxic sludge or waste or whatever, and Jason and becoming a bait, it's just so ridiculous. I mean, it's just awful. But, I mean, that's why I definitely think the best scenes are on the boat. I mean, I think all the good stuff happens while they're on the boat. I love Tamra, and she should have made it to New York. And it's a shame that she didn't. I thought her, little seduction scene was very clever. How she decided to seduce the teacher. I thought it was very clever.
I would have given her an A in biology.
What would you give her out of 10?
I'd give her a big something.
F.
No,
if your hand had degrees, you'd give her 1.
Despite the fact that she tried to seduce the teacher, I thought that was actually very clever, painting where her organs were on her body. She deserved it.
Wasn't a very.
It was clever.
Wasn't a very extensive project, though. Really, was it?
Well, she deserved a C. I mean, she had 2 already, so.
Do you guys think if they would have taken these characters and just left them at Camp Crystal Lake, that you would have liked the movie better?
It's kind of a loaded question. No. I don't know.
No, I mean, I thought that the boat, as a couple of you said, is a perfectly fine location for a Friday the 13th movie. Yeah, so it must be the characters that are the problem. I mean, so it's the 2 leads in particular are just really, really bland. The 2 lead characters, Rennie and Sean.
They have this I guess you call it a love story, but they really don't even interact with one another until the very end of the film. But there's one scene, I mean, sorry, not to step on Nathan's little, 2 cents, but, it's indicative of just how dull the main girl Rennie is just the moment where she's standing by the porthole and Jason tries to grab her through that. She just stands there. She doesn't really react. I mean, her face is.
Well,
just
she does. She kind of backs up to help him grab her.
Yeah,
it's even more awful.
She's just so stilted and just bland. I mean, I met her at a convention and she was a really nice lady, but I didn't say anything to her then. But I'm kind of glad. But she probably is the worst final girl in all of these films.
I'd like to say I don't think she had much given much to do. I think there was also the problem they did when they kind of injected her with whatever that was, those drugs. So she saw kind of like everything was slightly wibbly, like kind of Nathan vision. So it just made everything, so it's a bit like Laurie Strode in Halloween 2 when she's supposed to be stoned, or, on medication and sort of unable to sort of, so, but then she was...
See, this is the dangers of marijuana. You will like Friday the 13th Part 8.
Well, exactly. Yeah,
you guys wouldn't have known I even smoked anything if I hadn't said something.
True.
Well,
sometimes I wonder with your taste.
I've kept it. I kept my composure.
In fairness to Jensen Daggett, I was listening to I have that same DVD that you have, Justin, the deluxe edition from 2009, and Jensen Daggett and Scott Reeves do a commentary track on it, and they do kind of pull the piss out of their acting performances in it. In fairness to them.
Well, they both seem like really nice people and self-aware, and they're kind of. So I think. It has to be down. I think it wasn't the director, which is his first movie, wasn't it? So it kind of smacks of somebody that maybe if you'd had a Steve Miner or somebody who who'd got a bit of experience shooting these kind of things, then he might might have noticed that it was all very low energy, and that's the last thing. It's all right if you're doing some kind of romantic drama, but to some degree, but if you're doing a Friday the 13th movie, it's supposed to be quite high octane, isn't it? But there was zero suspense in this film, zero scares really, just a few kind of fun bits towards the end, and a few fun.
What did you guys think of the newish Crazy Ralph character?
Oh,
even he was underwhelming.
He was underwhelming, and he almost seemed to be. He was too over the top. It was almost like he was a pantomime character.
I kind of liked, the Crazy Ralph. He just kind of shows up a couple times and says it, and you're like, oh, okay. But this guy's like in almost every scene, like, you're gonna die, you're doomed. It's just over and over.
I think it was kind of it was too early to parody itself, wasn't it? And it didn't do it enough, if that makes sense. It was too half-hearted. So it was following on from all the Friday the 13th films. To have that in there just looked like, oh, we need a Crazy Ralph character, rather than thinking, hey, let's have a wink to the audience that we're going to do Crazy Ralph again. It just looked like it was like, it's painting by numbers, wasn't it? Having that character in there rather than anything that was subversive or playful. So,
one thing I will say, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and I think it's a really good pun. I wouldn't call it a pun, but it's a really good laugh out loud moment. Is when Jason's in Times Square and he kicks that boom box, and those guys are like, "Hey, you're dead," and he turns around and just takes his mask off. I like that scene. I thought that was hilarious. That Jason didn't kill these people. He's just like, "Hey, look at me. I don't think you want to mess with me."
Yeah, there's playful touches throughout the film, but there's just not enough. And I think, as Erik said, it's 100 minutes. It's just far too long for a Friday the 13th movie. It should have been a trim 85, 90 minutes.
Yes.
So, Nathan, have you said everything you wanted to say about the film before you do a bit of background?
The last thing I had on my notes here was about the runtime, so I agree with what you just said.
What do we think? Like I was reading the background, and they were trying to inject supernatural elements into the franchise to make it compete.
It just seems like it just seems like maybe they had some kind of element there that they were going for, but some of it was lost in translation. Like maybe there was some sort of, explanation as to why she's getting these flashes of this little kid, and why I still have no idea to this day why he turns back into that kid after the toxic waste thing. Maybe there's some kind of reason for it, but it's just not translated very well. So you're just left. You're left bewildered. You're like, what? I don't get it.
Yeah. I'd hate to be like covered in toxic sludge and regress back to somebody that was really immature. That would be horrible.
That's most Friday nights, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's most Friday nights for you, isn't it?
I was talking about earlier how, as soon as they arrive to New York, it's basically, you're going to get raped or mugged or killed by, anyone else aside from Jason. But I do like how it seems like every 5 feet there's like barrels of just toxic waste on the street everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just so stupid.
It's so stupid.
It's just common in New York.
What is it? It's the teleporting.
Yeah, the teleporting.
It's the teleporting that really gets me in the film. It's like it's the stupidest.
Exactly. If they acknowledge that and going, he can't be in two places at once. I don't know why he's being able to do that. If they acknowledge that, but they don't, it's just like you're just thinking, are they just doing it because they're being lazy? Or
I honestly think it's just very bad editing, just bad directing. I don't think they were intending for him to be, have these teleportation abilities. I just think it's just bad directing.
No, I think you're probably right. I think you're right. Also, I think it was Erik was saying that they were looking to compete with the Nightmare on Elm Street films, weren't they? And adding a supernatural touch to the films.
I would say that the year this came out, whatever Nightmare on Elm Street came out that same year, they're probably about on par with each other.
Well, it's part 5, wasn't it? Dream Child.
5, yeah.
Okay, then I'd say they're about on par with each other.
It was Halloween.
In terms of quality or in terms of box office?
Yeah, just quality.
All right.
If it's saying anything, I actually think I like this more than I liked The Dream Child.
Oh, well, this is where we're divided because I think The Dream Child is far superior.
Well, maybe, but I still can't get past the comic book guy in part 5. His acting, it's just.
I like Kelly Jo Minter, and she's in part 5.
Probably the worst, central character performance of any horror film, especially any late 80s horror film or franchise horror film.
True.
Cool. Okay. Well, do you want to? Sorry, Erik. Do you want to start with some feedback or not feedback? Sorry, background.
Some background. Well, does anyone have any background before I start?
Nathan? I have a little bit.
I do.
Oh, Justin.
Go on.
You can go first.
Yeah, let's let Nathan go first.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Scott Reeves was in a soap opera that my mother loves called The Young and the Restless. He played Ryan McNeil for many, many years on that show.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
Thank you.
Joseph.
Okay, if I'm remembering correctly, the budget was $5 million. I think it pulled in about just a little over 14 at the cinemas here in the States. Worldwide, it would probably be a little bit higher. So, that's pretty much why we got a Jason Goes to Hell. These films, even at their lowest, they are successful. Let's see. According to somewhere I read, I'm not sure if there's any veracity to this, but the director was picked because basically he just talked his way into it. He didn't really have any experience. He just kind of relayed his idea, and then someone just bought it. So it's kind of a luck of the draw thing. Kane Hodder appeared on the Arsenio Hall show in full getup, doing like an interview, but basically he just sat there staring at Arsenio Hall for his little segment. Probably a lot more entertaining than the film. The famous Start Spreading the News, New York advert was quite popular, at least here in the States. You couldn't really go anywhere without seeing the poster, at video stores or I remember even grocery stores around here had them in the windows. There was a grocery store called Piggly Wiggly back in the 80s. I do remember them having a poster saying Jason's going to New York. Is all over the TVs at the time. Really hyped people up, only to be let down. Let's see, what else do I have? Actually, I think that's pretty much all I have for this week.
Cool. Okay.
Justin, do you want to go or?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've probably got more than I have, but let's have a look. I was reading Crystal Lake Memories today, because that's obviously a great fountain of knowledge. No, whatever the term is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So, but the director was saying that his intention was for the at least half or 2/3 of the movie to be set in New York, and he wanted Jason to be in, having a fight sequence on the Brooklyn Bridge, actually having the boxing match in Madison Square Gardens, for him to be running through Bloomingdale's, or some big department stores in New York, and actually to dive off the top of the Statue of Liberty into the water. So, and he said bit by bit the stuff just got removed, and then it ended up with being 1/3 of the movie in New York, although mostly it was shot in Vancouver. So it certainly wasn't for want of I think his original vision was that the film should be, he pitched it as Jason Takes Manhattan, or so I think someone said, he said, well, we can't have Friday the 13th at Crystal Lake anymore, it needs to go somewhere else. And I think it was one of the producers said, well, just flippantly said, well, Jason Takes Manhattan. He said, no, that's a great idea, let's go for New York. But there was differences of opinions, and basically the bottom line was that Paramount were too cheap. And this is a recurring theme all the way through the Friday the 13th movies, that Paramount was always too cheap to spend any money, or they basically saw this as a cash cow, so keeping the budgets low, and then creaming off the profits to paying for some of the less profitable things. I mean, this is all the way through when they refused to pay for Betsy Palmer to come out and do cameos and things, and certainly. I think La Part Lincoln was in talks originally to reprise the role of Tina from Part 7, and I think the original idea was for her to be a counsellor herself, and then for Jason to return and start killing the people she's looking after. But she said that they offered her so little money that her agent said it just wasn't worth her being typecast in these roles. And I think Kevin Spiritus, or Kevin Blair, he wrote a treatment for the film as well, which was again was rejected. So it smacks of what happened with Amy Steele not being in Part 3, all the way through. It's all about keeping things cheap, and unfortunately the film does. The DVD 2009 DVD. I mean, it looks great. The quality of the image looks great, but the film itself just. Given the fact that it's on a cruise ship, it's in New York, apart from the iconic scenes in Times Square, the whole film feels flat, and that's partly to do with the direction and the actors. But just a couple of other things I've got was that as we know, these films were absolutely hated, and there was a very short Variety just said Paramount's latest cynical excursion into sadistic violence is slightly lifted above its generic mire by the stylish efforts of debuting director Rob Hedden and his lenser Brian England. They say it's basically the same musty slice and dice formula jazzed up by being moved to New York. And the last thing I was going to say was that the famous poster of Jason cutting through the I Love New York Big Apple poster, that New York City was threatened to sue Paramount unless they removed it. But as they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity, so I imagine Paramount loved that. And it seems as if they put much more money into promoting the film than they did in making it, certainly, from what Joseph was saying about it being everywhere. But it didn't get a release in the UK until it came out on video, and it was probably even cut then on UK video. But that's my background so far. So Erik, I'm sure you've got a lot more.
I've just realised I completely missed an opportunity. You said Big Apple, and I originally thought Kajagoogoo of a song called Big Apple. We could have played over the end credits of this.
What a
wasted opportunity.
That is a wasted opportunity. But we will survive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, my background is this was possibly meant to be the last in the series, and if you watch some of the deleted scenes actually on the deluxe edition, it's made quite clear that these are the last teenagers that exist in Crystal Lake, because this is the last graduating class, I should say, and the school has been closed down, and they're discussing about, what will Jason do? He'll have nobody to kill, blah, blah, blah. It was shot under the title of Ashes to Ashes, which I know some of the sequels that were shot under David Bowie-inspired pseudonyms, although another alternate title for it was Burial at Sea, and they started shooting in February of 1989, so they started shooting and had it in cinemas within 5 months. So you can see in the finished film, though, it looks kind of rushed. Scott Reeves, who plays Sean, was added 2 weeks into shooting. There originally was another actor playing Sean. His name was Lee Coleman. I don't think he went on to have a career in acting, from what I can see on the IMDb. But he does appear on the Crystal Lake Memories documentary Blu-ray. And they show an outtake of his acting, and he is bad, but he's no worse than Scott Reeves. The scene that they have of him doing is one where he says, "It's time that you listen to me if you want to get off this ship alive." And he delivers it like that. But then Scott Reeves in the film delivers it in the exact same way. So I think it was kind of harsh on poor Lee Coleman. The actor playing young Jason was also replaced, as he was unable to cope with the underwater sequences. So the editor's son was drafted in. He was called Timothy Merkovich, and he's now a famous editor as well. He's worked on Devil Inside, Darkness Falls, and The Last Exorcism Part 2. Here's a piece of trivia that you'll like, Nathan. Original auditionees for the role of Rennie included Renee Estevez from Sleepaway Camp 2. Also Dee Pfeiffer, yeah. But it gets better. Other people who auditioned for Rennie: Pamela Anderson. Imagine her as Rennie with her big baloopies.
Yes, that would be awesome.
And this one's for everyone: Elizabeth Berkley. Isn't she the lead from Showgirls?
She is.
Yes.
Yes. Imagine her as Rennie. Saffron Henderson, who plays JJ. She is the daughter of a Canadian rock musician called Bill Henderson, who is the lead singer of a band called Chilliwack, who I have never heard of. But people who made Crystal Lake Memories, both the book and the documentary, made contact with her, but she refused to take part. I don't think she's that proud of her work, although she should be, because she stands out. As myself and Nathan were saying, we think one of the more likable characters, the more interesting characters in the film. I was mentioning at the top of the show that the connection between this and The Final Girls. Does anyone know?
No, what was it?
Okay, well, Alexander Ludwig, who is the male lead of The Final Girls, he's also in Hunger Games and Race to Witch Mountain. He's also, curiously, in another 2015 film called Final Girl, singular, with Abigail Breslin. So he's in 2 films that old. But anyway, he is the son of Charlene Martin, who plays Tamara in Friday the 13th, Part 8. So there we go. Rob Hedden's sister plays the waitress, who says, "Welcome to New York." And Ken Kurtzinger plays the cook who's thrown into the mirror at the cafe. Of course, he's a stuntman, and he later went on to play Jason in Freddy vs. Jason. Let's see, alternate ending. What's that about? Alternate ending. Oh yeah, there's an alternate ending. Again, you can see did you watch the alternate ending on the DVD, Justin, where you have the 8-year-old Justin the 8-year-old Justin? Sorry, the 8-year-old Jason trying to crawl out of the mouth of the adult Jason as he's vomiting up all the water.
Yes, I did see that. That was in the they're kind of in the little documentary, the making of, wasn't it? Yeah,
it's absolutely ridiculous looking.
Yeah.
There's also another stunning deleted scene where the teacher Colleen ponders over writing a low cholesterol cookbook. I wonder how that one hit the cutting room floor. What an oversight! As you said, there's one character, the character who gets killed in the sauna with the hot coals to the stomach. His original death scene was where he got darts to the eyes. As Justin, you were saying that earlier, there's a famous still image from Fangoria's coverage at the time. As Joseph was saying, the budget was $5 million. It opened on July the 28th, 1989. It made $14.3 million. It went in at number 5 in the box office top 10, which kind of says everything. Nightmare on Elm Street 5 followed 2 weeks later. It made $22.1 million, but again, it's a huge drop-off from the previous entries in the series. And Halloween 5 followed then in October of 1989. It made $11.6 million, made it the least successful of the big 3 that year. So all 3 big franchise installments, were definitely on the wane. And that's all the background I have, apart from, does anyone know what kind of underpants that guy was wearing in the opening scene on the boat? The Jim and Susie characters. Jim is wearing the most god-awful underpants, and I just want to know what they are so I can avoid ever purchasing a pair.
Are they jockeys? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but they're awful.
I don't know.
I mean, how he manages to get that girl into bed with those underpants on. And also, he pretends to stab her as well.
I know.
Yeah.
It was 1989. I can imagine. What were you wearing in 1989, Erik? I bet you had baggy jeans and a bowl haircut.
I never had the bowl haircut, although I did then try and be like, in the early 90s, try to be like Brett Anderson from Suede. But it didn't really succeed.
So you were like tapping your bum with a tambourine a lot?
No, just I wasn't tapping bum with my hair, but I had hair that I wanted to make me look like Brett Anderson. Because I was skinny, but no, the hair wasn't working really.
Do you have I had a floppy fringe. I got mistaken.
I know
Brett
you
Anderson,
did, yeah.
A few times.
You got mistaken for
Brett Anderson.
Brett Anderson?
Yes.
Did you?
A couple of times, yeah. And the guy from Ned's Atomic Dustbin. So,
of course, yes.
Of course. So anyway, so enough of looky-likeys. But how about Joseph? Are you happy to read out some of the comments from the Facebook group on this?
Yes, I am. We actually have quite a lot this week. So I'll get started here. Patrick Walsh from Scream Queen says, I think he's continuing on from something, so I'm probably going to be reading in reverse. So hold on, let me just, screw that. He says, actually, let me get his first one. He says, Rennie wears beige slacks. She deserved worse than death. And then he goes on to say, also the slow motion throat slashing of the captain that makes it even more painfully obvious that the machete came nowhere near him.
Yes.
Okay, that's Patrick Walsh.
Thank you, Patrick.
From Screen Queens. Brad Yasuda says, where do I start? The fact that several members of the cast are and have been soap stars. The rocker has had a career voicing anime and doesn't talk about her horror roles. She was also in The Fly 2 as not Gina Davis. That beautiful boxing match between Julius and Jason on the roof. The fact that Vancouver makes New York appear pleasant. That Rob Hedden owns the flying V guitar that kills JJ. That Jason can be restored to a dead kid by toxic waste. That Kelly Hu gets picked up and dropped on the disco floor like a sack of potatoes. That the only true sympathetic character was the kind teacher who was left in the burning cop car. I think I agree with him there. That the dog made it all the way to New York. That a small yacht was floating in the middle of a closed-in lake. Well, I like it a little, but holy shit, are there problems. And don't even start with the fashion and hairstyles of the period. Erik will be having a field day. I'll stop for now, but I will have more. That's from Brad Yasuda.
Thank you, Brad.
Amanda Reyes says, it's not a very good movie, but watchable and really fun with like-minded Friday the 13th fans who just like the absurdity of the idea and don't mind spending too much time on a Love Boat Gone to Hell flick. Plus, Chrissy Snow's dad is a jerk. Hey, he did play Chrissy Snow's dad. I remember now. And once they hit the streets of New York, from Three's Company.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Suzanne Summers. Anyway.
Oh, right, yeah.
And she says, and once they hit the streets of New York City, it's a goofy good time. Also, Jason Takes Manhattan has one of the best TV spots ever made for a slasher. The first time I saw it was really late at night, maybe during an airing of Saturday Night Live, and it startled me. That's Amanda Reyes.
Thank you, Amanda.
Brennan Klein says, sure, it's not what it promises, but Jason on a cruise ship is still a totally acceptable premise, as long as you know what you're getting. Cocaine, disco, Joan Jett guitarists. It's one big send-off for the 80s. Also, I love the Dayglow Nightmare version of New York. The second you make land, you're attacked by drugged-up rapists, and things only get worse from there. It's like a film made by a 7-year-old whose only knowledge of the city is what his mother warned him about. That's what I said.
It's very true.
That was from Brennan Klein. Tom Virtuoso says, Jason Takes Vancouver is full of unlikable characters, too. Too much time spent on a cruise ship, a completely drab backstory that leaves the actual time period up for debate, which technically is not the late 80s despite the awful clothes, and the ending just sucks. But there's something nostalgic about the opening theme.
Jason is relatively menacing with a mask on, and the Asian girl definitely gets one of the series' most mean-spirited kills. Let's see. That was Tom Virtuoso. Scott Pliskin says, the best thing about the promotion of Part 8 was Jason being interviewed by Arsenio Hall. Let's see. Ben Chidwick says, I have fond memories of Jason Takes Manhattan. I was staying at my sister's and found a rental store. At the time, I had only seen the first one and was curious about Jason. That plus an obsession with New York prompted me to pick this movie. Initially, I was slightly disappointed with the lack of Manhattan, and maybe I have my nostalgia glasses on, but other than the unmasking of Jason, he looks ridiculous in brackets, and the lack of likable characters. This movie has some fun kills and a different environment to the other movies, which I thought was a good thing. I could go on, and unfortunately, he does not. Michael Ferrari says, what an accurate portrayal of my hometown. Toxic waste everywhere. You get drugged and raped the moment you step off a ship that arrived from a lake. I think Jason owes those guys a new boombox. Jason Bianco says, paparazzi shot of him shopping for one. Blanco? Jason Blanco?
Sorry, I think it's Jason Blanco.
That's what I said, Jason Blanco. What did I say, Bianco? Oh, sorry, Blanco. Yep. Yeah, he says, paparazzi shot of him shopping for one at Radio Shack, though he would eventually procure one elsewhere. Jason Voorhees shops smart. Jason Voorhees shops S-Smart. And he attached a picture of Jason in a retail store. So there you go. Let's see. Dan Dominguez says, when I was in high school in New Jersey, not far from New York, we had a substitute teacher who was also a production assistant on films shot in the area. I always looked forward to having her sub because she always talked about what she had just worked on or was going to work on. One day she subbed for Spanish class and told us she had just done some PA work on the next Friday the 13th film, which had been shooting in Times Square. I was beside myself, thrilled that the series had returned to the East Coast, and bombarded her with questions. She didn't have much to say, and later, when I saw the movie on VHS, I discovered why. Horror fans found out that the majority of it had been shot in Canada, with only a brief few days of shooting in Manhattan. What a jip, we thought. And what false advertising. Woohoo, we're we in for an even bigger disappointment. Friday 8 is a real stinker, the second worst of the series behind Jason Goes to Hell, in my opinion. After seeing it, I felt so disrespected as a Friday fan. Do they really think we could buy this Drek? Or we would buy this Drek? Shipwrecked cruise ships, death by guitar, toxic waste, roof boxing, and hoodlums randomly injecting the final girl with drugs? It was stupid, inane, and a real insult. And it wasn't even trying for intentional humor. I think this movie is a blight on the Friday legacy. Nick Yeoman says, I know it's not a patch on the earlier films, but after being lent this by a school friend on a battered VHS, a grainy copy no less, I kind of fell in love. The theme, Darkest Side of the Night, just gets me every time. Yeah, the never-ending boat ride does wear thin, and the way they cut away at any moment of teenage slaughter is infuriating, but this is Kane at his best. As I saw this before Part 7, I remember being confused by the fact that he drowned in the lake at the end of Part 6, and at the start of Part 8, he's still down there. What the hell happened in Part 7? I hope Nathan's with me on this one. Such love for this film. Let's see. Andrew Rooney says, do you guys know the link between Friday 8 and H2O? Alan Dale.
I don't think so.
Mikey Faulkner says, it's awful, but the awfulness gives it a special place in my heart. From the most bland final girl in existence to the sheer what the fuck of Jason's transformation at the climax. It's just so wonderfully silly. Okay, Bob Hartshorn says, oh boy, here we go. The good. The opening scene is fun. The cruise ship body count carve-up is fairly efficient in execution. The runaway style rock chick is cool, and the boxing decapitation is a knockout. The bad, everything else. Labored kills, obnoxiously vapid final girl boy duo. Boring Big Apple finale, and that what the fuck climax in the sewer being amongst the top bullet points of dog poo. Not the worst, that would be Jason X, but a long way from Mr. Voorhees' glory days. Let's see. Jason Blanco writes again, I was born and raised at gunpoint in New York City during the 1980s, and it's all true. This is the most acute evocation of my hometown ever committed to celluloid. Rest in peace, ye old Times Square. Plus Chrissy's father, the Reverend Snow. A howler and an exceedingly good time. Let's see. Sarah Keefe says, I always found this hilariously awful. The city of New York floods the sewers with toxic waste every night. A cruise on what appears to be a freighter. The fact that the MPAA came down hard on this movie is all too obvious. Still, I always have a good time watching it. I always laugh my ass off when Julius gets his head punched clean off his body. Moving forward, Simon Wright says, I seem to be in the minority, but I love this much maligned entry in the series. Yes, the title's misleading, but that never really bothered me, as I enjoy all the boat-based bloodletting that leads up to the climactic scenes in the Big Apple. As I think you guys said on a past podcast, boats can be an effective setting for a slasher. How well they use it here is debatable, but if nothing else, I've always liked the atmosphere of some of those scenes. Also dig the opening narration, the callback to part 2 at the end, and the cheese-tastic song that bookends the movie. I'll certainly concede that it has its issues. Case in point, it's probably too long. Matron. Jack Castillo says, Christ, this blows. Toxic waste turns Jason into a baby. I think I'd rather watch Terror at 10 Killer.
Ouch.
Ouch, yes.
That is not bad. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
It's better than Terror at 10 Killer. I'll say that for Jason Takes
Yes.
Gas.
Andrew Rooney. Andrew Rooney says, oh my God, this is a doozy. Paul Chandler writes in twice. He says, I think I like it all the more for its mistakes. I saw it for the first time a year or two ago, and the weight of its reputation made me presume that it would be absolutely terrible. It is, but mostly in an entertaining way. It's becoming one of those films I end up supporting because I feel sorry for it. And then he puts in quotes, have you guys seen my dog? I think he came this way. This film should have been called Jason Goes Cruising. Who needs Manhattan? Let's see. Miles Hamer says, an abysmal, cheap, and glossy smear of an entry that's wholly unfulfilling. Pure nostalgia for the gaudy thrills of the pop video stylings pulled me back much more than the film deserves, so I do somehow find myself rewatching it every couple of years or so. Perhaps I just really liked teased hair and street punks. 3 out of 10, and that's damn generous. And that's all we have for this week.
Okay, well, we have got some other feedback, but I think we'll come to that in a little bit. But do you think it's probably time for a bit of light relief? So, Erik, do you want to do your joke of the week?
I'm scared.
Why are you scared?
Because it was I have 2 jokes of the week. I have one that's hit the cutting room floor because it has a reference that's not applicable outside the UK and Ireland. Oh, so I had to come up with a more universal one. And I know you're not going to like it.
Yeah. It's my joke of the week.
Erik, we're all behind you, as most of the people in the bar are on Friday night. So here we go.
Hey.
It's my joke of the week. It's so freaking fantastic.
Hey! I haven't even said anything yet. I didn't even get a syllable out there. Yeah. Did you hear that most of the cast don't like the movie? Scott Reeves likes it. No, I've messed it all up. Scott. I want to go. Did you know that most of the cast don't like the movie? Scott Reeves thinks it's awful, but Jensen dug it.
Oh.
Okay, can I give you my cutting room floor joke? Because it was better. Justin, you're the only one that's going to get this one because I don't think our American friends are. Did you hear that at this point in the timeline, Jason was constantly suffering from indigestion? This is why he was always after Rennie.
I quite like that. I quite like that one. And
Stripes liked it too.
You got it.
I got it, Erik. I got it, Erik.
Oh, did you? Because I emailed Meep, who is our US correspondent, and said, I'm running this joke by you. Does it make any sense? He says, no, I've never heard of Rennie. So,
yeah. Nathan, if you heard of Rennie, because I would imagine you must get heartburn after all those cookies you eat when you have the munchies.
No, I don't.
It's the European equivalent of X-Lax, or not X-Lax, but like Pepto-Bismol, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that was I liked that one, Eric. It's a shame you had to go for Plan B, but
yeah, that one was actually clever.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was clever after I got it.
Yeah, you see, I didn't think it. I shouldn't have to explain the jokes after. That's why I have to make them kind of more universal.
Fair enough. Well, thank you, Eric. What we'll do is play. We're going to have come back with some feedback, but this is how to contact the show.
Be sure to search for and like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at THC_podcast. Our voicemail is 858-233-9281. And you can email us directly at the.hysteria.continues@gmail.com.
Let's see. Feedback. I'll go first. This is from Andrew Rooney, and he's basically going off of his Facebook post, or if he actually made one, I don't remember by now. But anyway, it says, so much to say on Friday the 13th, Part 8. Please forgive me if I ramble. Good Lord, where do I start? First, a positive. The title track, Darkest Side of the Night, is 80s-tastic. Smells a little bit like they were copying the Nightmare films there. How on earth did this great franchise get to this? The formula is so simple, isn't it? Okay, the most obvious thing. How do we get from a lake to the ocean? Am I missing something there? And when did Jason learn to read nautical maps? Did that boat just drift to its desired destination, or was Jason driving the boat? I know slasher franchises aren't known for their continuity, but this is so far off the rails it's just baffling. I'm positive they came up with this idea and marketing idea for getting Jason into the Big Apple.
Sorry.
Whoa. Oh, Justin.
Oh, I do apologize.
You ruined a perfectly good feedback section with your tomfoolery.
Sorry, I was just having a fiddle behind the scenes. Sorry, Joseph. I do apologise. Carry on.
That's right. He says, anyway. Oh, Eric. He says, I'm positive they came up with this idea and marketing idea for Jason, getting Jason to the Big Apple, then build a film around it. Jason looking at the hockey mask, etc. Clearly shot just for trailers. Cringe City. I remember being so pumped as a kid running home from the local video shop with my copy. Jason in Manhattan. Hell yeah. But the excitement quickly faded when half an hour in I was looking at my VHS case and ejecting the tape to check if I had been giving the right video. Because it's not set in New York. A gimmick film without the gimmick. This film just looks horrible. It looks like a soap, like Days of Our Lives or Young and the Restless. Part 7 had a similar look for me. Cheap and dull looking. This is such a cheap looking film. The two leads have to be the worst in the history of slashers. Did anyone check their pulse on set? Zero charisma. The guy is beyond dull. I'd be amazed if he's not an exec's son who was gifted the role. The attempted subplot with the captain and the baby Jason visions were just embarrassing and not worth mentioning. The boat. Oh, the boat. What kind of ship is this? Part cargo ship, part crappy cruise liner with Saturday Night Fever style dance room? Boy, I'm just getting interrupted all kinds of places. Sauna and a boxing ring. Very odd school trip. And apparently this is the kind of trip where you can push fellow students overboard in the middle of the ocean with no consequences. The tone of this film is so weird. Jason/Kane Hodder is really invested and going for it, but that is completely at odds with the ludicrous behavior of everyone on the boat and the brain-dead plot. This film is so incredibly lazy and a colossal mess. The ultimate middle finger from Paramount to its loyal Friday fans. This is as clumsy and about as little effort as can be put into a film. Why did they even bother? In saying all this, I do love this film. It is such a crappy film and deserves to be ridiculed. I have made my peace and have fun with this steaming turd now. Cheers and thanks for listening. I feel a lot better now. Andrew Rooney.
Well, thank you, Andrew. You're getting it off your chest.
It does make a valid point about there's no comeuppance for tomorrow when she pushes Rennie into the sea. And also, Rennie doesn't seem to move. Like, the boat doesn't seem to move in relation to Rennie when she's pushed into the sea either. She stays in the same place in relation to the ship, as if the ship is not moving either.
Also,
it's just a ludicrous scene in many ways.
But it's like, when they're leaving the ship, when there's water, the ship's about sinking and there's water splashing across and coming down the stairwells. And then when they actually get down into the water in the boat, it looks like a mill pond, doesn't it? There's like no swell at all.
Yeah. No.
So anyway, attention to detail. But no, Thank you, Andrew. Who would like to go next?
I'll go.
I will.
Oh.
Okay.
Fight.
Who wants to go? Fight.
Mine's very short.
Ooh.
The feedback. The feedback. Is
sorry. Sorry.
Okay, he says, I just wanted to tell you that your podcast is incredibly entertaining. I keep all of your episodes on my iPod for repeat listening. I also love the Teenage Wasteland book. Like Justin, my phone just went off. Okay, like Justin, I'm also a huge Susie fan. I'm wondering how the subject of her new track for the Hannibal finale has not come up on your show yet. Eagerly awaiting your next episode. Murdering Mouth.
Oh, what was that?
That's his name, I guess. Murdering Mouth.
Okay, well, that's a Creatures song when he did with John Cale. So, just a little fact there for you, Erik, if you can look it up. Murdering Mouth. Thank you for writing in, and obviously, obviously got very good taste in books and music. Yes, Erik. Sorry, was Toya not available to do the closing theme for Hannibal?
Too busy.
Too busy, was she? Okay.
Yep.
She's doing the closing theme for Cash in the Attic.
Shut up.
But if you haven't heard the
celebrity Cash in the Attic.
Yes. But you haven't heard the Hannibal song by Susie called Love Crime, then you can hear it on YouTube, and it's fantastic. Isn't it, Erik?
I haven't heard it.
You haven't heard it? Oh, come on.
No.
Well, we might.
I've got feedback here from Killing Nose, and he says that Toya is brilliant.
Oh, come on, Erik.
Hopes that someday.
Killing Nose.
And thank you, Killing Nose, for your email. That was really nice. So he likes Toya, and he hopes that one day I write a book, because if I do, it'll be brilliant.
Okay. Well,
thank you, Killing Nose.
Right. So what's the real one you haven't made up?
Okay. Hi there, it's Dick Brown. I really enjoyed your H2O episode, but I must take umbrage with your thoughts on the ending. This is an argument I've had with people about this film for many years, starting with the very first night I first went to see it in the cinema. Oh, sorry, my scroll bar has just gone mental. Okay, I remember
Erik,
coming out of the screening and my mates...
How can we work?
Sorry?
You need to be professional. Erik, otherwise
I can't help it. It's openoffice.org are the problem.
Yeah, Erik, you don't need to be playing like clips of Friday the 13th Part 8 when someone's reading your feedback.
Yeah, aha. See? Justin.
Or someone's phone buzzing when you're trying to read feedback.
Yeah.
Or someone breathing so heavy into their iPad.
Or somebody being utterly sexy and fabulous.
That's God. We need to get to it.
Come on.
Okay, it's Dick Brown. I really enjoyed your H2O episode, but I must take umbrage with your thoughts on the ending. This is an argument I've had with people about this film for many years, starting with the very night I first went to see it in the cinema. I remember coming out of the screening and my mate saying, I can't believe they beheaded Michael Myers. I looked at him like he was stupid and told him that it patently wasn't Michael Myers, that it was somebody Michael had gagged and stuck the mask on before escaping. It had seemed so obvious to me when I watched it, the way the figure had reacted with shocked confusion when Laurie called him Michael before reaching up and fingering the mask. Oops. Realizing what was happening.
Erik.
What he was wearing. Sorry, the word fingering makes me laugh.
You're so immature.
Oh my goodness.
No, I think I must have been cleansed with toxic waste at some stage because I do act like an 8-year-old, I know. What was before reaching up and fingering the mask, realizing what was happening and what he was wearing, then becoming more desperate, reaching out to her, silently pleading. I actually thought it was quite clever. Anyway, my mate called bullshit on that, as did everyone else I spoke to about it. In fact, I never saw my theory confirmed anywhere. Then out comes the sequel, showing exactly that. Okay, I was wrong about the gagging part, but the rest fit, and I finally thought I would be vindicated. But no, instead, everyone... Where is it? Sorry, my scroll bar has gone mental again.
Oh, God.
Sorry, I'm back. Don't stop. But no, instead, everyone started saying they'd come up with that as a big cheat. Nobody would accept the groundwork was deliberately laid in H2O. Eventually, of course, on a Blu-ray commentary nearly 15 years later, they actually went on record and confirmed what I'd always seen on that first viewing of H2O back in the day. It was written that way and it was deliberate, and the scene should be obvious for anyone looking back on it. But still nobody seems to accept it. Or if they do, They just say it was lame. It's very frustrating. I think it was a very clever end to the movie, and no lamer than Hannibal Lecter escaping by wearing someone's face, for God's sake. Oh well.
Retroactive continuity.
Oh well, I still love you, H2O ending, and I always will. Thanks. Speak soon, Dick Brown. Well, it's not retroactive continuity, Joseph, because Jamie Lee Curtis has confirmed on the H2O commentary that was their intention all along. Was that?
I don't buy it. I do not buy it. Sorry, Jamie Lee. I don't buy it.
Well, no, but it's her and Steve Miner on the commentary track, and they both.
I don't buy it.
Say that
this is Nathan's. Alice is still alive. I don't buy it.
And Laurie is still alive.
I still think it's shit though. But I mean, I don't have a problem with the H2O ending. It's the Halloween Resurrection beginning that I have a problem with.
Yeah.
I still laugh at Nathan's comment that it would be less insulting if Michael Myers just picked up his severed head and sewed it back on.
I mean, his eyes grew back after part 2, so
that is
anything
true.
could be possible.
Yeah,
that is true. Well, thank you, Dick. Do anyone else? I've got one here because I haven't done one yet. We've got a voicemail coming up as well, which I'm very excited about. But this says, "Hey guys, long time little contact. Just caught up with your H2O episode and was chuckling away at your ramshackle brilliance as always. A couple of things though, guys. So he must be enjoying this one after listening to Erik. Firstly, opening outdoors are a thing. We have one here as our work building, formerly a house. They're stupid, yes, and confuse everyone who steps across the threshold, but they do exist. They're often used in buildings where there's little space to navigate once inside a property. A very dull but true fact. So there you go.
Yeah, but the thing in H2O is that there's plenty of room inside that room she's in. Like, it's a huge, big living room, and the door opens out. Sorry, I know there's more basic, fundamental things I should focus on in H2O, but that... Yeah.
It niggles. Yes, I know. Well, it goes on to say, secondly, what's your beef with the 1990s? In describing H2O, all but Justin stated that the film was dated in a disparaging manner. If you'd remarked upon the same about the fashions and speech patterns of an 80s slasher, you'd have cited it as a pleasing highlight. I understand it's pure aesthetic and an opinion, but as much as some people enjoy the day glow and perms of the 1980s, I like the pastel chinos, slackers and self-aware smart mouths of my formative decade, the 90s. And if you don't like it, me and the Spice Girls are going to get to you with our flannel shirts, mini disc players and episodes of California Dreams until you agree.
Well, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I really, really, really want a Zigga Zig.
Zigga Zigga.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think, to be honest, the Friday the 13th Part 8 is a perfect example of where fashion went wrong at the end of the 80s into the early 90s, isn't it?
Yeah, it was slowly melding into the 90s, so it's quite, doubly atrocious.
Yeah, and I never wore chinos in the 80s. I hated chinos. So I didn't like those or the 90s, sorry. The fashions, I think, for the late 80s and the 90s were pretty bland, because a lot of it was just kind of mid to late 90s, or even early in the 90s. It was all kind of grungy, wasn't it?
Well, what about the Saved by the Bell style of fashion?
I used to go around dressed like Screech all the time.
So I bought a pair of chinos once, but I didn't like them, so I was taking them back to the store, but I tripped and fell in some mud, ruining the very pants I was returning.
Oh.
And that is very clever. Was that ghost written for you?
Yeah, that was ghost written.
What's that? Is that's not a true story then?
That's a sign.
No, it's from Seinfeld.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I was going to say, why were you wearing them to take them back to the store? See, everything goes.
Ruining the very pants I was returning.
Unless there's a double entendre in there, I don't understand this comedy. So, unless it's kind of like Mrs. Slocum.
Oh, speaking of comedy, I urge you all to seek out that Susie and the Banshees 1984 Alice in Wonderland clip I found on YouTube. It's hilarious.
It's playful.
Don't you agree, Justin?
They all took acids and took money from Channel 4 to recreate the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. What's wrong with that?
Susie does drugs?
Well, she did.
It's pretentious. It's like art students at their worst.
But it was some great music.
I just thought it was hilarious.
The music's great, though, isn't it?
No.
Oh, Erik.
No.
You love it. And why did you seek it out?
I don't know how I stumbled across it.
Why were you searching for Susie and the Banshees?
I wasn't searching for Susie.
Because Toya had disappeared down the rabbit hole.
I think the bear doth protest too much. So, anyway, I shall carry on. Anyway, that's all. I would mention my new cult, sci-fi, and horror podcast, not the special edition, available on iTunes, but that would be crass opportunism. So I definitely won't mention my new cult, sci-fi, and horror podcast, not the special edition, available on iTunes. Keep up the wonderful work. Love, Miles Hamer, host of the new sci-fi and horror podcast, not the special edition, available on iTunes. So...
All right, we're going to start charging for advertising space here.
But it's good to hear from you, Miles. So,
yeah.
Have we got any others to read out, or should we have got a voicemail? Shall I play the voicemail?
Sure.
Yeah. Here we go.
Hello, gentlemen. This is your pal from the City of Angels, Ara Ali-Shan. Actually calling in on a Halloween night on a special occasion. I understand you are going to be reviewing Jason Takes Manhattan, and as the only fan of this movie, I feel obligated to actually make a phone call, not just write an email or comment on Facebook. I feel obligated to kind of call you guys up and defend one of my favorite movies. I love Jason Takes Manhattan. I always have. I know he's barely in Manhattan. But it's just a really fun movie, one of the more entertaining entries in the franchise. I love parts 1 and 2 for horror and suspense, and I love parts 6 and 8 for entertainment. And I love the rest of them too, at least the Paramount ones, but that's, those are my favorites, and Jason Takes Manhattan is one of them. So I've heard you guys bash it. I've heard everyone else bash it, and I understand, it's okay to disagree. But, I really do love that movie, and I was prepared to call in today and be really defensive and, just really break down everything I love about that movie, every scene, every moment. But it's Halloween, and I had such a good time tonight. We took our daughter out, who's only 6 months old, and she had such a good time, and it just put me in such a good mood that, I'm just going to be the bigger man, and I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to be hostile. I'm just going to be cool about it and, agree to disagree. So, anyways, I love your guys' show. Keep doing what you're doing. And one last thing. Anyone who doesn't like Jason Takes Manhattan can kiss my ass. Oh, and before I forget, and all right, guys, have a good one. Keep doing what you're doing.
I love Friday the 13th Part 8. Now, don't you feel like an asshole?
I was going to say, I think Ara will probably be quite pleased by our even-handed sort of approach to the film. So,
I'm curious as to what you guys give it on a scale of 1 to 10. I would give it a 6.
Ooh.
I would give it
I'd give it a 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
3.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I did like it the best.
Well, yeah. Nathan, none of us are surprised.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, I know. But
okay, so that's for feedback.
Yes. Is there any other feedback, or are we done? Are we spent?
I think that's it.
Gosh, it's been a long one this time. We're over 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So
all I want to say is about something we said earlier about Elizabeth Berkley auditioning for the lead role. Now, what if she would have auditioned and they would have made the character Nomi Malone as the main
that
heroine?
Would have been.
Well, see, I thought it'd been funny. It's like Jason's on board. I'm so scared.
I wouldn't like seeing Pamela Anderson either.
Maybe she could have been hepped up on caffeine pills fighting Jason.
I heard about that. Is that when that was? Well, we've talked about Nathan's drug hell on this show.
It's drug shame.
He's a junkie.
I only tried it once.
What, this morning?
Yeah. I only tried it once this morning.
So, anyway, after rehab, we will be back next time. After Nathan's broken Nathan out of rehab. So we are going to be doing another listener pick, aren't we, next time?
Yes.
I'd like to say.
George Ferns has suggested we cover Wes Craven's 1986 film Deadly Friend. So we are doing that next, although we have done it already.
We have.
Yeah, we've already recorded that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we won't be putting up the Facebook post asking for your comments because we won't be able to read mentally afterwards.
We'll actually be recording 2 different episodes by the time we release Deadly Friend, or I'll have to check the schedule. But yeah, we're all kinds of a Twitter right now.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we'll be back with Deadly Friend next time, so it's all going to be very confusing, not like usual.
And we're going to leave you with a song that's been mentioned several times, Darkest Side of the Night. It's credited on the end credits as being Peter Fredette, but on YouTube it says it's by a band called Metropolis, so I'm going with that one. It's Metropolis singing The Darkest Side of the Night.
If you haven't already covered in cobwebs after listening to the show, and it is now 2025, when the next time you go out of the house, but we will be back to the future on the next episode for The Killer Robot Girlfriend with Wes Craven's Deadly Friend. But in the meantime, say goodbye to the good people and see you next time.
Bye. You're not going to get me in the leg.
Blah, blah.